Chapter 877. At the intersection of a certain residential area in Nade district, a black nanny van was parked by the roadside with its engine off. However, Hai Jing, who was in the driver's seat, was not idle at all. Other than answering phone calls, he was adjusting his schedule. When he finally had a chance to catch his breath, he looked at his watch. It was almost 5 minutes past the agreed time. He sighed and made another call. Yeah. Open the door. The door at the back opened, and Yeah stepped in with her handbag and sat in her seat. However, the other seats were empty. She and Hai Jing were the only two people in the car. Yeah tied up her hair and asked, "Where are the others?" Meng Fei took them to the venue first. Unlike some people who are 10 times lazier after one trip to the music festival. By the way, is there a guest at home? I saw people coming in and out of your house. Who would come to visit in the middle of the afternoon? A bunch of annoying people. Let's go. It was rare for Yeah to be agitated. Hai Jing didn't ask any more questions. He started the car and changed the topic. Just now, the company's IT department came to ask about a bug in your personal information retrieval system. It's probably a bug in the SCA's debugging system. Next week's event won't be easy. I happen to be working there, so why don't you let me know? Yeah. Got it. Ya's irritation clearly continued. Hai Jing felt a little strange this time. He couldn't help but turn his head and wanted to ask, but he saw a slender figure coming out of the residential area from the back window. Ruiwen is going out too. It seems like there's an activity at school. Yeah opened the carriage door and called out from afar. Ruiwen, come here. Ruiwen, who was dressed in the school uniform, maintained her silence. She moved over to the side of the car and only replied with a big sis Yeah when she heard Hai Jing's greeting. Brother Jing. His words and tone were exactly the same as Luo Nan's. Yeah put on the demeanor of an elder sister. Ruiwen, go to school. I can give you a lift on the way. What kind of activities did the school have on Sunday afternoons? Also, how was it on the way? Hai Jing felt that something was amiss. He quickly calculated the route in his mind, but in the end, he could only form a large triangle on the map. However, as a manager, she had to solve this problem. He also smiled at the thin and somewhat autistic girl and beckoned her to get in the car. However, Ruiwen didn't appreciate it. No need. After simply spitting out these 2 words, Ruiwen bowed in this direction. She was polite and distant, and then directly walked away. Hai Jing raised her eyebrows. Acting like an elder sister, huh? It's because you're here. I have a good relationship with her. The little fellow is independent, so you don't have to worry about her. Yeah, he's just like his brother, a liar. Hai Jing was confused by Ya's words. The only thing he could be sure of was that Ya was currently in a bad mood. It was best not to provoke her. The nanny van started moving, and Hai Jing soon realized that there were many other cars that started moving at the same time. There was one in front, and 2 behind. They were all very sturdy models of the same model, sandwiching the nanny van in the middle. It was fine at first, but when they left the neighborhood and got onto the main road, Hai Jing's nerves tensed up. Is this kidnapping? Ya snorted. Bodyguards. Hai Jingdo forgot to drive and turned his head to ask, Ya, which big shot has booked you? I hope that's the case. Ya's words had just left her mouth when the car in front suddenly slowed to a stop. The car behind followed, activating the safety distance control function, and the nanny van was stuck in place. Hai Jing only cared about turning his head to talk. He fell forward due to inertia, and his ribs hit the steering wheel. Under these circumstances, he really didn't know whether or not to believe Ya's words. Isn't this kind of bodyguard a bit too rough? A knock on the window rang out, and a tall, thin, and vigorous figure appeared outside the driver's seat. He had a familiar face. "Hello, Mr. Hai Jing. Are you free?" Hai Jing's ability to recognize faces was quite good. After staring blankly for 2 seconds, he recalled a string of memories from the depths of his heart. Last year's university birthday, the municipal square, the first performance after signing a contract with the band Mountain Creek, the extraordinary person in the underground passageway. Of course, there was also the close relationship between this person and Luo Nan. He remembered that when he first met Rui Wen, this person seemed to be there as well. "Me, Mr. Qin." "It's me, Qin Ikuan." Qin Ikuan greeted him through the car window. "We meet again. I've just been hired to be Mrs. Moya's full-time driver. Please take care of me in the future." Hai Jing clearly knew that the matter wasn't that simple, but he still asked a very stupid question. "Who hired you?" "You can think of it as Luo Nan." Moya replied from the back seat. It felt more like a sigh. The nanny car started up once more, and Hai Jing had already switched from the driver's seat to the front passenger seat in a daze. As a manager, he wanted to get to the bottom of things, but he didn't know where to start. As his line of sight shifted back and forth, he suddenly saw Rui Wen, who had just left coldly, burying her head into another flying car near the entrance of the residential district. It was a sports car with a more distinctive style. The sports car quickly started up, and soon it ran alongside them. The driver of the car even pressed down the window to greet them. "Teacher Cat Eyes." Cat Eyes gave him a smile from the driver's seat. It formed an extremely smooth and gradual transition with the sandstorm region even further away. The further she went, the fewer the flying fragments became. It felt more and more stable. As for the enormous withered tree in the centermost region, it was hidden within the flowing ash-gray mist. It was like the work of a photographer, but it was also like she was observing some virtual reality. Reality and illusion were tightly blended together. Chapter 878. In the end, Rui Wen's perception was extraordinary. She suddenly stopped halfway through. She stopped in front of an extremely blurry boundary and hesitated. If she went any further in, it would probably result in a bad influence. However, the summoning intent inside was very clear. Rui Wen hesitated for a second, but in the end, she still stepped forward into the area ahead. Fine waves gently rippled out following Rui Wen's movements, forming marvelous ripples in the void. Horizontal and vertical waves rose and fell, dense and alternating. They reverberated back and forth, erasing the surface color of the mist. This scene, which was originally a relatively simple fusion of the virtual and the real, suddenly had many blurry silhouettes and colors. It was like a projection that wasn't quite successful. Layers and layers interweaved together. Rui Wen also saw that there were a few structures that were already relatively clear. They were similar to mountain peaks, rivers, buildings, and even more refined vehicles. They suddenly collapsed, and then they were reconstructed under the push of some sort of continuous but relatively chaotic force. It was just that there was already a clear difference from the scene before her. And so, Rui Wen knew that Luo Nan should have some new ideas and new harvests in the construction of his sandwich domain. But she could tell from this part of the scene that his results were still relatively weak. The boundary between the real and the imaginary was not clearly sorted out. It was quite sensitive to external stimuli, and its internal structure was not clear enough. It lacked stability. As the soul designer, Luo Nan didn't seem to be ready yet. In fact, Luo Nan's gaze was always focused on Rui Wen after she entered this area. He attempted to analyze her deeper nature in order to make this area better accommodate her existence. Rui Wen was very happy to cooperate, but Luo Nan's ability was truly insufficient to complete all of this in a short amount of time. Luo Nan gave up after a few adjustments. Ruiwen also took the initiative to restrain her energy and adjust her state. She made herself closer to nothingness in order to avoid bringing even greater stimulation to this area. And so, Ruiwen entered the space of the withered tree. This space completely imitated the structure of the withered tree of the real world. It was as narrow and small as the real world was. Though it was narrow and small, the structure of this space looked much more stable with the blueprint provided by Luo Zhongheng. It was no different from the real world. Ruiwen found Luo Nan without expending any effort. Right now, Luo Nan was in the resting room at the lower level of the tree hole space. He sat on a circular seat leaning against the wall with his head lowered. His breathing was long and drawn out, but an unstable situation would occasionally appear in the middle of it. His back was bent, his arms were crossed, his legs were crossed, and he was sitting very openly. However, if one looked closely, one would find that the structure of his body and the details of his movements were very unnatural. As he breathed, many parts of his body appeared stiff or distorted. In front of him, there was a pile of metal components, all of which were exoskeleton configurations. They were in a mess and were not taken care of. Blood stains could also be seen in the messy pile of spare parts. His injuries are very serious, Ruiwen stated the facts directly. Yeah. Luo Nan gave a simple response, but he didn't raise his head. In fact, his spine was injured, and normal movements were extremely strenuous. His voice was hoarse and weak. Ruiwen didn't say anything more. She just walked forward, and her slender and slightly cold fingers lightly rested on Luo Nan's neck. She made a slight shift, and she detected many areas of swelling, collapse, and even deeper and more serious injuries. Luo Nan was immediately unable to maintain his deep state. He shouted loudly, "Stop touching. It's itchy. It hurts." Ruiwen's fingers lifted up as if she had been electrocuted. She froze there, not knowing what to do for a time. Hiss. "Don't worry. I'm super sensitive right now." Luo Nan hissed as he spoke. His entire body was trembling. Right now when he opened his mouth to speak, his entire internal organs twitched slightly. However, there were some things that needed to be explained clearly. The main thing is that the perfect body created by the lamination interference isn't that easy to bear. It was so fun to bully people just now, but now the backlash is life-threatening. I'll help you reposition it. Ruiwen didn't participate in Luo Nan and Dean Wan's academic research process, so she didn't really understand what a perfect body was. However, she discovered that there were over a dozen bone fractures on Luo Nan's body from her rough observations just now. His internal organs were also displaced and damaged. If Luo Nan was a normal person, he would already be struggling for his life in the ICU. Luckily, Luo Nan was still able to laugh. He really was laughing. Wait a moment. Let me memorize everything first. Ruiwen still didn't understand. The injuries are quite serious, but these are all the consequences of having an incomplete exoskeleton frame. Not this pile. This is what I stripped off the body of the fellow outside. Cold sweat was dripping down Luo Nan's cheeks, falling onto the gaps between the exoskeleton fittings. There was even a thin layer of dust on top of these fittings. He nodded with his chin. It should be these. Master Shou used the rib bones of a ghost ox to process them. Their toughness and transformability are pretty good, but their strength is a bit lacking. Right now, all that's left is a layer of dust. I relied on this toy to forcefully push myself to the perfect body. This move is called Sword Energy Eye Cleansing, right? Luo Nan continued to liven up the atmosphere, then he explained, "You've seen the structure outside. It's true that it was quite tiring to bring you in this state, but your control is excellent. It's much better than I imagined. Plus, I wanted you to come over for the sake of continuous improvement. Right now we're in the stage of collecting data and endlessly experimenting. Speaking of which, do you understand the structure inside? A little bit. It's really troublesome. You've been injured all this time. That's not the right way to describe it. You should say that the existence of this half-baked domain is a constant burden for me. But you need to see that the benefits inside are enormous. Luo Nan needed to give Rui Wen an explanation of the current background. Have you discovered yet? Right now, the core of the domain I've set up around the dead tree is solid. Even though it's also a sandwich biscuit, it basically continues with the balance that you saw last time. I'm talking about a relative balance. But the outer region is something I've set up on the spot. Let's call it virtual reality for the time being. It's basically pieced together randomly. But there's really no other way. If I don't do this, a lot of messy energy won't be able to leak out. In addition, I need to use this to deceive people. I need to deceive a lot of people. Rui Wen immediately thought of the outer region, the fellow who was entangled in the spider web. It's just one of them. A test subject. I won't go into the details. In short, I've already become the target of public criticism due to my not-so-smart actions this morning. Many people want to pull out my tendons and flay my skin. I definitely can't beat them head-on, so I'm using this method to trick them. Yeah, I'm trying to trick them. You're using this. Rui Wen showed a rare display of straightforward doubt towards Luo Nan. Cough. You can't really win people's trust, right? Right now, it really doesn't look good. The logic is chaotic, the rules are incomplete, and there's even some messy interference of consciousness. Luo Nan was a bit embarrassed. Forcefully integrating them into the void world is really difficult for people. The backlash is also quite fierce. However, we still have opportunities. There are conditions. For example, the recoil is quite sufficient. You've seen your big brother's soul cloak, right? There's also the spider web altar. Right now they're endlessly gathering redundant consciousness resources from the sea of consciousness for my use. They're even extracting energy from the abyss region, but it's very messy. Rui Wen hit the nail on the head. This is just like a large-scale biological brain array in the cloud. I still haven't sorted out the core architecture on my side, and there aren't many usable computing nodes. How many people in this world understand the basic concepts of configuration? Snake tongue, Yinlu, cat eyes, and a few others aren't very good at it. Speaking of which, you're one of the most important computing nodes. Your little brain is quite clear. The more you understand the situation here, the less worry I'll have. Understand? Rui Wen didn't respond. She just stared at Luo Nan, and there seemed to be specks of light flickering in and out of the depths of her dark pupils. They were like the streams within a deep gorge, occasionally sparkling with light. Chapter 879. Actually, the previous conversation between the two did not affect the progress of Luo Nan's bug catching for his injuries. They naturally entered a state of concentration similar to that of multicore parallel processing. They coordinated and mobilized their mental resources to resolve all sorts of problems in an orderly manner. This sort of parallel processing model, simulated by the brain, originated from Dean Wan's secret technique of overall planning. Admittedly, it was an incorporeal mana-consuming skill, but for the current Luo Nan, it just so happened to be able to digest the serious excess of computing power resources. As for how Rui Wen did it, only the devil knew. Everything had been going quite smoothly. But Luo Nan's special focus state was broken when Rui Wen cast her gaze over at this moment. This gaze had already exceeded the scope of what Luo Nan was familiar with. Unfortunately, what existed within wasn't any complicated thoughts. Instead, it was some sort of unique method that followed Rui Wen's own logic. Luo Nan instinctively wanted to analyze it, but he didn't know how to start. This caused the unstable state of his domain to fluctuate once more. For a time, he found it a bit hard to bear. He could only adjust himself and subconsciously talk to himself. Are you wondering why I'm using such a complicated and strenuous method? You're under a lot of pressure. Rui Wen's words were like an arrow piercing his heart. Luo Nan grinned wryly, but he felt unexpectedly good chattering like this. Yeah. Every single one of the people I need to deal with right now have abilities no less than Jin Tong and Gong Qi. I hoodwinked them this morning, but in the end, it was just hoodwinking. Those people have their eyes fixed on the cloud world. No, it's very likely that they're looking at the deeper layers. Even if it's the cloud world, there's no room for them to toss and turn. If I'm exposed, then so be it. I might as well forcefully create one. Isn't this taking things for granted? People have to live under pressure. If I don't take this opportunity to pull my strength up by a chunk, then it will certainly be very unsightly when I return. This is a situation where there is no retreat and only advancement. Looking at it from a different perspective, your big brother has indeed found a shortcut to quickly level up. Rui Wen stared at him. You said before that you shouldn't think of shortcuts when doing things. Cough cough. That's the principle of how people conduct themselves. But if a pie really falls from the sky and smashes into our mouths, we can't spit it out, right? Rui Wen didn't ask what the pie was. She didn't open her mouth any longer. She continued to stare at Luo Nan with her extraordinarily serious and deep gaze. And it was under her observation that the truth, hidden behind layers upon layers of mental and material barriers, appeared one after another. Luo Nan formed a connection with the material void, the sea of consciousness, and even the polar domain of the abyss region at the same time. Regardless of the details, the connection twisted time and space and erased the elements such as distance to the greatest extent. As a result, the vast and complicated domains that he could reach were all deeply or shallowly connected to him. Also, because of the special structure, some sort of depression was formed, which absorbed energy and information from all directions and in all forms endlessly. For example, the torrent of information created and stimulated by the billions of domain fragments in the misty maze had no pattern to speak of. If this was a few days ago, the last time Rui Wen came to the tree hole, Luo Nan would have been drowned in the endless stream of information. And now, the source of information had increased by quite a bit. The amount of information seemed to have grown significantly as well, but Luo Nan seemed to be a lot more relaxed when dealing with it. There was an enormous filtering net that couldn't be distinguished clearly. It wasn't just a single layer, but a complex structure that spanned vertically and horizontally. It covered the entire sea of consciousness and even deeper regions. It lay across the center of the surging torrent of information. It carried out precipitation, filtration, analysis. In the end, some rules were sorted out and transported to the most core region. The core of the filtering net was obviously Luo Nan. To be precise, it was a complex projection based on Luo Nan and related concepts. The projection seemed to be some sort of religious image from the historical knowledge that Rui Wen had recently learned. To put it simply, it was a god. Luo Nan might not have deliberately created this sort of image, but this entire process of absorption, precipitation, and filtration was destined to accumulate into this sort of structure. Rui Wen could trace even further upwards, but it was meaningless. She watched silently, but her line of sight had already reversed. The image cast into the depths of Rui Wen's eyes very faithfully reflected the complex pulse of the present, but it was never a pure reflection of the present. Before, the echoes flowed in the opposite direction, but now they flowed in the direction of the rippling light of the stream in the depths of her eyes. The frequency of the pulse continued to accelerate, exceeding the scope of the present in the blink of an eye. The pulse continued to accelerate and evolve until it completely lost the outline of the present, transforming into a diffuse and decaying still image. And so it came to an end. This isn't good. Rui Wen didn't know why she was seeing such a scene, but the terrible scene at the end forced her to open her mouth and tell Luo Nan. However, Her ability to express herself was truly limited. The more anxious she was to describe it, the more she didn't know where to start. Chapter 880. Why was it that meat pies fell from the sky? It was fine to just look at the lowest requirements. Of course, this was just a joke. The so-called lowest requirements weren't just specialization in space-time configuration and level 4 of the heaven stairway. It was just like how the simulator wasn't just a simulator in the traditional sense. What is this? Ruewen asked. This was a matter of course. The interface that suddenly popped up and the information window was filled with alien characters. Anyone would be confused. Luo Nan had said before that he needed Ruewen to understand more about the situation, so there was no need to hide anything. At most, he would omit a few details that would take a lot of effort to explain. You can think of it as the inheritance my parents left behind. Ah no. One of the precious treasures they left behind. Of course, it also belonged to my grandfather. Remember what I told you before. There are many traces on our planet that belong to a certain or even multiple advanced civilizations. Looking at it from the current situation, even though grandfather and mom and dad can't be considered true pioneers, they are extremely powerful discoverers and translators. They excavated many resources that originated from advanced civilizations and transformed them into resources that we can use. The tree-hole space we're in is like this. The mist maze that hasn't been successfully developed is like this. The virtual brain system you see right now is also like this. You can't understand the characters on it, right? There's nothing I can do about it. It's an alien language. Speaking of which, the virtual brain system is far too complex. I haven't completely understood it yet, so I won't go into details for now. Right now, all you need to know is that I just activated a new function from within. It's extremely useful for the current situation. Ruewen was the best listener. She didn't utter a single word during Luo Nan's long speech. She just listened attentively and watched attentively. It was as if Luo Nan was the only person in the world. There was no need to doubt that she would miss a single shred of information. Luo Nan gestured to Ruewen to shift her gaze from his face to the projection area. The virtual brain interface. The central virtual brain galaxy had a structure of millions and millions of stars. It was very complex and dazzling. The outer satellites, especially the exoskeleton system that represented personal equipment, also involved many layers of explanation. Luo Nan just skimmed over them. Luo Nan's fingertips and Ruewen's line of sight finally fell upon another satellite, which was the outer space flying ship. A few days ago, the lonely, dark body of the starship had simply circled around the central, virtual brain galaxy, in silence. No matter how hard it was stimulated, there was no response. But when Luo Nan passed the 100-year sequence general education test, as well as the additional offline test. Perhaps more importantly, after Luo Nan made contact with the Sunwell Hell in the distant deep space and experienced the baptism of its flood of information, the unreadable state of this satellite was gone forever. At this moment, although the spaceship in outer space was still dark and lifeless, a certain area in the middle of the spaceship was electrified. The light in the area was passing through some of the portholes on the spaceship, turning into fragments of different shapes and flowing out. Amidst the twinkling lights, a relatively complete functional area appeared, the reflection of it. Oh, this area appears to be mini and empty, but it is actually operating normally. Although I can't see its internal structural components too clearly, it is still extremely precise and tight as a whole. It may be illusory, but the way it operates is real. It belongs to the reality of the material world. It's a virtual physical system. Luo Nan's telepathic thoughts linked with the external neuron, driving the image on the projection to enlarge endlessly, focusing on the soul light source of the spaceship in outer space. As his cultivation continued to rise, the precision of his perception and control over this area continued to rise as well. From a visual perspective, They were like two astronauts walking in space or ghosts floating in the starry sky. They approached the spaceship in outer space ceaselessly and then seeped inside. This area within the spaceship wasn't too spacious compared to the overall structure. The environmental layout was also relatively simple. There was only a single piece of integrated equipment that occupied an area of about 10 square meters. All that was left were the corners. The integrated equipment was like a large beetle lying on the ground, with its head and tail cut off. At the relatively wide front was an arc-shaped interface. Right now, it flickered with the radiance of information. Large amounts of text and diagrams, as well as the constantly switching map and various non-optical imaging effects, made all of this exude a lifelike professional style. Perhaps at this very moment, in a certain corner of the universe, there was such a piece of equipment. It was controlled by some bizarre intelligent life form, carrying out its functions and missions. Luo Nan constantly fine-tuned the angle of the projection. He was like a photographer, deliberately creating an immersive feeling. Right now, he and Ruiwen stood at the top of the tree-hole space. Behind them was the lens and the surrounding nebula. And in front of them was the enormous piece of equipment, even though it only existed within the mini-spaceship of the virtual brain system. Luo Nan was the operator. He had already found the relevant content from the large manual of the virtual brain system. Chapter 881. Just listening to this name is enough. As for the effects, I just said it. There's no essential difference from the ones on Earth. It's just a mechanical instrument. It builds a limited space. In the extreme, you just need to soak a person's brain inside. It mainly targets the body and soul framework of humans or other higher intelligent life forms, especially the brain and nervous system. Through electrical signals and other stimuli, it deceives the sensory neurons and creates a fake environment for people. Of course, it suffers from many restrictions. Even if it uses digital technology to construct a virtual physical system, it will only be an imitation of the local laws of space and time. In essence, it is only an illusion that acts on the brain. Some even require the active cooperation of the participants. It's clearly impossible to use this model in actual combat. At the very least, I have no way to install a virtual helmet on the heads of extraordinaries. Luo Nan said a cold joke, but Ruiwen didn't know how to cooperate. Her expression was serious but calm. Ahem, but the advantage of this emulator is that it's a relatively good editing tool. As long as there's enough data, as long as the data is sufficient, the computing power is sufficient, and there's also the power supply. It can edit a very good setting and even a script. It can create a virtual Earth or even the universe. Theoretically, it is feasible. On a smaller scale, it can be used for ordinary games and training. On a larger scale, it can be used as a higher-level simulator to perform deep calculations and deductions. The most important thing is that if there is a script that has already been edited by someone before, it can be stored and used on the spot. Luo Nan extended a finger and soon brought up the front interface. He brought up the image of a certain planet that he had personally experienced. It was the background setting of the offline test question. This script is quite amazing. It's extremely close to reality. It belongs to the reality of that higher civilization. It can be used as a reference, but it's just a reference. It can't be used alone. The plot of the exam script is too obvious. It doesn't seem like a normal plane waiting to be excavated. Luckily, there are many choices within the downloaded offline test module. I need to synthesize them. Ruiwen knew that the reference Luo Nan spoke of was referring to the misty haze-like projection illusions outside. The elements were quite complex. It looked like Luo Nan had already begun experimenting in this area, but the results weren't clear. Luo Nan could see part of Ruiwen's thoughts. He continued to explain awkwardly, "There's really nothing I can do about it. My sandwich domain was created by compressing and piecing everything together. It wasn't easy for me to achieve a balance, but that was only an approximate solution in an ideal situation. It's just like the mathematics questions you're learning now. The formulas and constants used are all limited to practice and exam conditions. They don't take into account the real parameters of the material world. Don't expect to come up with anything convincing on this basis. However, if we don't care about the authenticity of the material plane, its settings are quite sufficient. The one outside, Captain Jimmy, is currently trapped in that script. I've even mixed a lot of elements into it. Coincidentally, he's implanted a very high-level dynamo core, so he can help test it out. The prey that was trapped in the spider's web and sleeping very lightly. Ruewen understood. She looked seriously at Luonan and nodded seriously. Luonan couldn't help but extend his hand to stroke the little girl's hair. He enjoyed the smooth sensation of her hair, and at the same time, he justified himself, the current situation is much better. I can utilize an extremely abundant amount of computing power resources. I can optimize things from before. But it's still a domain after all. I can casually optimize and reorganize it. If something goes wrong, I won't even have time to cry. That's why I need to find a simulator first. The circle outside, aside from being used to deceive people, is also used for this purpose. Oh, low-end ones won't do. Let's continue. Luonan didn't linger on this topic. His fingertips repositioned the front interface and slid down to the second topic. Let's call this topic space-time fault for the time being if we translate it. The materials used for this simulator are quite high-end. I still don't really understand it, and I can't translate it well. It's probably called a space-time silhouette. But we have a ready-made example. Do you still remember? You were sleeping at the time, but you should have heard many people talk about it. It's President Ouyang's logic world. Ruewen nodded slightly. She really did hear people talk about it. At the time, Ouyang Chen intercepted a certain crowded commercial center area of Xia City. He drew a boundary, separated space and time, and formed a world of his own. In one fell swoop, ability users and ordinary citizens were separated, and he thwarted the terrifying actions of a crazy First Oblatum of the Order of Justice. Although the enemy Ouyang Chen dealt with at the time couldn't be considered a true powerhouse, this sort of method was still one of the most astonishing and absolutely brilliant performances since the era of distortion. Let's say, all streams return to the origin. President Ouyang's logic world can be said to echo with a simulator of this level. Even though the specific methods and applications are different, the core train of thought is relatively the same. It mainly targets the structure of space and time itself. Chapter 882. Luonan continued to follow the order of interpretation from before. After translating the options, he pointed out the materials used for this level of the simulator. This is easier to translate. It says that the raw materials used for processing are the space and time we reside in itself. Hee. Even though he had already experienced it once, suddenly speaking such big words gave him a very reckless feeling. Ruewen didn't laugh. She had an appearance that made sense. Luonan felt that he couldn't stay calm anymore. He could only cough once to wipe away the awkwardness that had arisen once more. He also maintained his elder brother's dignity and continued to operate on the front interface. Luonan was different from just pointing at the first two items. He opened the third item's secondary interface. The first item was densely packed with explanatory text. There were a few complex diagrams mixed within. There were also formulas and the like. Luonan had already researched this before. The large sections of explanatory text here weren't very friendly to a half-baked translator like him. They also exposed his shortcomings in the area of pure theory. This wasn't something that could be made up for in a short period of time. So he quickly skipped over it and entered the more complex, continuously changing, and completely unfixed graphical interface. What you see right now and what I perceive in the system are actually two different things. Just like how the material world we see is not the same thing as true existence. I can use my mental senses in the system to capture even more dimensional structures. What appears before our eyes is just a projection of one end of the complex structure of space and time. You should understand this. Ruiwen really did understand. Her intuition regarding the structure of space and time even surpassed Luo Nan's. She was able to estimate the approximate, panoramic view, after looking at one end for a long time. Inside, it was a mess. Luo Nan was immersed in this chaotic scene. He was even a bit intoxicated. A three-dimensional life form possessed a pseudo-three-dimensional vision structure and an illusory spatial imagination. Only a character like Luo Nan, who possessed an extremely powerful mental sensibility, could view the structure of space and time with this material foundation. The more he could do it, the more he could feel the endless mysteries and beauty within. A direct observation of the structure of space and time. Just this sort of simulation is already a huge gain. Luo Nan's attainments in the configuration of space and time could already be applied to actual combat. He had gone through the 100-year sequence and the additional questions to verify that he had indeed reached a considerable level. However, the anatomical diagram presented in the simulator was still quite shocking. Every time he observed and sensed it, he would have a brand new experience. Chapter 884. It was the 12th of May in Ban City. This day seemed especially long. In the eyes of relevant people, this day had been divided into many events from morning to night. Ever since the Fusang divine tree system covered Ban City, experts from all walks of life took turns. There was no need to mention people like the Pope and Mr. Mo. There was also a high-level extraordinary level conference. Including the observers, there were close to 100 participants, and any one of them was a big shot. Normally, these participants would be the focus of attention and analysis by various intelligence agencies. Intelligence personnel would hate to stare at their crotches and see the color and quantity of their farts. But today, the vast majority of people here were just there to cheer the crowd, but they still couldn't be underestimated. There was a huge amount of information, but it was also mixed with a huge amount of noise, forming a huge amount of data that tormented all kinds of professional intelligence analysts. Many intelligence agencies around the world were prepared to work until they died. It couldn't be helped. It was better than making a wrong judgment and causing a world war. In comparison, Deep Blue and the Apocalypse Laboratory, hidden in a certain region of the Deep Blue world, had their own intelligence analysis team. They were willing to spend money, and they had the advantage of being the first contact that others couldn't get. But they also spent the most effort on this. It had been 15 hours since Mr. Mo left the public site. The analysis team that had been temporarily assembled by the two laboratories was still working intensely. Bald Jeff gulped down his 5th cup of coffee, stepped on an electric hoverbike, and temporarily left the research lab. No one cared about his actions or whereabouts. In the face of heavy analysis and research work, even raising their heads was a burden they couldn't bear. Jeff didn't go too far. He randomly found a communications room that could communicate with Earth's spacetime. He didn't care if he was being monitored or not. He just turned on the trans-world communication system, and soon, a 3-way communication was established. The projection showed the upper body of a person. On Jeff's left was Director Mao, who had appeared at the extraordinary conference. He was the spokesperson of Quantum Corporation in the inner world. And on his right was his biggest financial backer, Wang Yu. She was the head of a certain great clan with unfathomable influence in the political, military, and business world. She was the head of the Jade Review Association. Although Bald Jeff was the leader of the Deep Blue Laboratory and had always been arrogant, compared to these two, there was an insurmountable gap in status. There was an insurmountable gap in status between the two of them. The only thing he could do was to adopt a businesslike attitude and report the latest situation. Even if 88 isolated cities floating on the Earth's crust were a little strenuous to support a globalized environment, political, economic, military, and historical factors had determined that such an attitude was necessary. Of course, the result of the complicated equity structure was that the leading power of the board of directors was greatly increased. External directors with huge connections and influence, as representatives of various forces, entered the board of directors, forming a kind of loose interest group, harmonious but different, fighting but not breaking. Of course, the board of directors had also been renewed and replaced over the past few decades. In the end, those who were seriously unsociable were eliminated and a relatively stable governance structure was formed. Quantum Holdings definitely had a basic standpoint. Even if it was vague, it would always stand firmly on the side of the world's advantageous side, steadily seizing the benefits. With a successful example before them, Director Mao and Wang Yu brought up the discussion mode of Quantum Corporation's board of directors. Cooperation is the correct choice. Everyone here isn't a child protecting their food. As long as there is compromise, there will be a basis for cooperation. As long as the first step is taken, there will be a first step. Even if it's a deliberate lie, there will always be elements of truth within. But many people think highly of themselves and prefer to settle things in one step. There are also people who don't recognize the logic of adults. Having said this, Director Mao recalled a certain piece of information: there really is a child among the collaborators. And quite a few intelligence agencies believe that he has a tendency that isn't too good. Regardless of whether Wang Yu knew or not, she had to put on an interested attitude. You're talking about Luo Nan, right? What do you mean? It's said that this person, Luo Nan, has a tendency of thinking that makes simple problems complicated and complex problems modular. He hopes to be able to use a kind of universal solution to solve these types of problems. This doesn't conform to the reality of doing things, and bugs will frequently appear. But we have to pay attention to one possibility: with his talent and special ability, he really can find a kind of universal solution in the vast majority of situations. Even if it's only universal to him. If this is the case, then it will be quite troublesome. A capricious theorist. The kind that can distort reality. Wang Yu concluded. Then she laughed. Generally speaking, this kind of person often ends up being kicked out of the board of directors. But that also requires a period of running in and confirmation. Before that, I have to lure them in first. This is the way I like to handle things. Me too. Bold Jeff listened to these topics full of ambiguity, misdirection, and hints. He couldn't help but yawn. Chapter 889. Your Majesty. Luo Nan spoke of a particularly awkward title in modern society. He didn't know how to continue for a time. On the other hand, Her Majesty Empress Wu spoke softly. She sounded a bit careless, but she was straightforward and straightforward. He Yuan asked you to find me. Yes. What's the matter? Luo Nan was speechless for a time. Don't you have something to arrange? Luo Nan suddenly came back to his senses after being stunned for half a second. Speaking of which, he really did have something to discuss with Her Majesty Empress Wu. At the very least, Her Majesty Empress Wu and President Ouyang had given him firm support during the extraordinary Round Table Conference. He had to express his thanks. Luo Nan's words had just begun when he got stuck. It was all Peony's fault. She spoke in a weird tone in the chat group. He didn't know what to say. Fortunately, Her Majesty Empress Wu followed up. Is it about going to D City tomorrow? That's right. Though it was a bit different from Luo Nan's original intentions, it was good to cut in from here. He took advantage of the situation and said, Sister Yuan mentioned that your majesty will go to the outer seas of Ban City to cover my departure. I haven't even thanked her yet. However, the situation has changed from before. Your majesty doesn't need to go there anymore. What I mean is that you don't need me anymore. No. I don't mean that. Traveling with your majesty is naturally excellent. Perhaps it was because the first impression was too deep, but Her Majesty Empress Wu's soft and lazy voice always made Luo Nan think of the gentle and refined image of a woman with a scroll in her hand. To be more precise, she was like a female teacher, the kind that taught language or history. And this image was interwoven with the warm afternoon sunlight and the lingering sleepiness. Then, of course, there was the slight pain of the book tapping on the back of his head, as well as the resulting awkwardness and the like. Of course, all of this was just a figment of Luo Nan's imagination. Luo Nan quickly came back to his senses and revealed his own plan in full. If I go to the auction with your majesty, I don't need to go from the outer seas of Ban City. I can go back to Xia City. I can just go from there. It just so happens that there are some things I want to discuss with your majesty, President Ouyang, and Old Man Yu. Luo Nan didn't directly say Mr. Mo and the new plane, but Her Majesty Empress Wu understood. But unexpectedly, Her Majesty Empress Wu straightforwardly refused. There's no need to make a special trip back to find someone. Your Majesty. Luo Nan was a bit confused. If you're considering everyone's position, then I can tell you that with Ouyang and Old Yu's personalities, there's no need for you to deliberately say anything. Ouyang Chen's temperament and character are somewhat similar to yours. You can be considered as an otaku with skills. When it comes to socializing, it's all the ideal routines in the books. You pay attention to not betraying others and not being betrayed by others. You have a tacit understanding and your hearts are connected. There's no need to explain too clearly. Elder Yu, on the other hand, has the mentality of a senior. When he sees an outstanding junior, he wants to give him a hand and send him on his way. As for the situation itself, it doesn't matter. Both of them are like this, so why are you still looking for them? As long as you're not too willful and self-centered, it'll be fine. Luo Nan rushed to declare his position. Naturally I won't. But as he spoke, he subconsciously did a self-examination. He had hidden quite a few things regarding the matter of the new plane. It was fortunate that President Ouyang was still able to stand firmly by his side and support him unconditionally under these circumstances. The more Luo Nan examined himself, the more ashamed he felt. Her Majesty Empress Wu's voice continued to enter his ears. As for my side, let's not talk about anything else. There's no need for us to travel together. What if something happens at this time? You're playing tricks right under my eyes. Do you want me to pretend not to see it? Or do you want me to pretend not to see it? Luo Nan was very embarrassed. Actually, part of the reason why he wanted to return to Xia City was related to this. Now that he had been exposed, he didn't know what to say for a time. Her Majesty Empress Wu was as unhurried as before. She spoke in a clear and gentle tone, just like an afternoon class. At this time, you should be asking for your assistance. What? Are you thin-skinned, or are you looking down on me? Luo Nan came back to his senses and hurriedly smoothed out the conversation. No, I really do need your help to guide me. It's always been like this. The signal waves of the Hexier faithfully restored Her Majesty Empress Wu's light laughter. The past is the past. The present is the present. I was able to guide you in the past, but now I can only give you advice. It's not that bad. For some people, it's not that bad. If I want to guide Chinju, believe it or not, I'll immediately get into a good fight. Luo Nan choked once more. Her Majesty Empress Wu and Peony really had the same tone. She even locked onto the true God as an example. She completely placed this matter in the context of social relations. Speaking of which, this was Her Majesty Empress Wu's usual style. She had long since said that she was an investor. She even compared Luo Nan to the target of her investment. Now she wasn't an investment, but a social transaction. It sounded quite distant. Or perhaps it was an unconventional reminder. No matter what, Luo Nan was grateful. Her Majesty Empress Wu didn't deliberately put on airs. You proposed. You requested. Let's go according to your method. There's no need to return to Xia City. Let's avoid unnecessary trouble. Let's go to the outer seas of Ban City. It's also those coordinates. We'll meet there at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Okay. Luo Nan's response was straightforward and efficient. He made a firm resolution in his heart. He would take advantage of the time they were traveling together to explain the matter of the new plane as clearly as possible. Oh, of course, he still had to eliminate sensitive elements such as the Cloud World and Sunwell Prison. Today, he would seriously organize everything. Even if he didn't meet face-to-face with President Ouyang and the others, he would still have to provide some relevant information. The information he gave to Dean Wan was quite suitable. Of course, he also needed to find a more appropriate entry point. Luo Nan thought deeply, and his mind wandered a bit. He suddenly heard Her Majesty Empress Wu call out to him. Luo Nan. Ha! I'm very grateful. Luo Nan was just short of sending his ignorant face to Xia City. Think about Hundred Gathering and Chinju. Think about the many people of the past 2 days. I really am grateful just now. But be careful of schizophrenia. Luo Nan opened his mouth, but in the end, he didn't make a sound. He also felt that while they were both extraordinaries, facing the martial empress and facing the pope and a true god were two completely different situations. This could barely be called the difference between friend and foe, the difference between inside and outside. Her Majesty Empress Wu continued to speak softly. The next few days should be relatively calm. There will be a few tacit understandings due to the involvement of many parties. Even if Hundred Gathering and Chinju are unscrupulous characters, they won't go so far as to disturb us excessively. But no matter how calm it is, the day of the auction will reveal the dagger. You must be prepared. Luo Nan actually calmed down when it came to this topic. He responded softly, I understand. Many thanks, Your Majesty. Chapter 890. Sure enough, the following matters on the surface were as Her Majesty Empress Wu had described. She was at a level where she wouldn't be affected if she didn't deliberately observe it. However, it was unknown how many bubbles were changing and dying in the depths of this seemingly slow state. It looked like the same body of water, but with the passage of time, it was likely to be different. Under such circumstances, it was Tuesday before they knew it. Today was May 14th. It was also the day Peony had released an advertisement. 2 experts in ecology would hold an academic lecture in Acumen College's great auditorium. Luo Nan certainly wouldn't be able to support them, but he had already obtained the relevant courseware and materials from Peony last night. He hurriedly studied it twice, feeling quite emotional. However, his main focus was still placed within the hazy and shattered Misty Labyrinth, as well as the virtual brain system that had continuously operated for over 30 hours in the inner universe. Within the Misty Labyrinth, Rue Wen's search and the observation of the lens had already made some progress. As for the inner universe, this simulator relied on the external neuron structure and Luo Nan's formidable computing power to simulate it. Using the brain in a jar mode, it imported a huge amount of external data and executed an extremely complex automatic editing process. Up until now, there was still no definite outcome. This didn't mean that the automatic editing process was a mess. In fact, the results produced by the simulator at this stage were already quite impressive. Impressive to the point that it was a bit excessive. Right now, the virtual work area in front of Luo Nan reflected a dark red glowing mist. Hundreds and thousands of specks of light were scattered within. At first glance, it looked like a nebula in the depths of the universe. It was a bit similar to the scene reflected by the lens. But there was a fundamental difference between the two. The nebula scene produced by the lens was a combing and mapping of the complex and deep misty labyrinth. It embodied the result of simplifying the complex. It was just that it was embodied in an intuitive manner in the end. It was roughly equivalent to a slideshow. But this dark red nebula simulated by the inner universe didn't have any simplifications. It was the direct result of the simulated spacetime structure rendered by the brain in a jar mode. The rigorous core and the complex structure had already far exceeded Luo Nan's imagination. What he had originally conceived was just a so-called plane that he had pieced together by hand. It was nothing more than that. His target of reference was the Format 70 Research Institute created by his mother and the cloud world. He could probably play around with some fancy space-time distortions between the two. It would be fine as long as it looked larger. This was because this situation had been set in stone ever since he rode the flying devil ray to rise from the bottom of the sea. He had stayed in this region of the sea for a long time. In fact, this was the effect that he hoped to achieve. Mr. Mo and Luo Nan, this combination of 1 and 2, 2 and 1, needed a few more variations. Only then would there be more room for maneuver. Luo Nan feigned ignorance. He allowed the satellites, submersibles, and the like to take pictures and record from afar. Besides, most of his attention was still on the dark red nebula. The inverse simulation of the plane was already too impressive. What he could do next was to make a choice and focus on the details of his construction. But because of the habit and hobby of a researcher, he instinctively wanted to sort out this huge area before this. At the very least, don't touch the lottery ticket blindfolded when you make your final choice. However, this was not an easy task. It's the script. Ian Lee's idea was good, but whether it was feasible would depend on the simulation results. Luo Nan had borrowed the emulator's editing and setting function with great difficulty in the previous period of time to inform his thoughts and intentions. But he was certain from this, the skill tree of the inner verse was pretty much focused on the map, or perhaps it could be said that it was the battle editor. Plot settings were absolutely not its forte. This round of human-computer interaction experience was much more sluggish than the pure map simulation from before. Luo Nan wanted to let the AI deduce and form a highly compatible novice guide plot from shallow to deep. From the looks of it now, it was just a beautiful imagination. At this time, Luo Nan didn't really have much hope. He could only try to save a hopeless situation. He also used this opportunity to communicate with Her Majesty Empress Wu. After all, this wasn't the final plan. As long as he restrained his demanding mentality, he would always have some leeway to compromise. Luo Nan was still pondering over the matter of the plot guide when a communication message transmitted from Xia City gave him a tiny stimulation. Actually, Luo Nan had already locked onto the orderly fluctuation transmitted from high up in the sky a few minutes earlier. He followed it all the way until it arrived above his head. Luo Nan raised his head and saw a medium-sized airship penetrate the thick layer of clouds, slowly descending. It didn't stop until it completely descended. Luo Nan slapped the flying devil ray's fins, and his figure flew up to meet it. Soon, they flew side by side. The airship noticed Luo Nan's actions, and the side of the airship opened an emergency door. Luo Nan took a step out, leaving the top of the devil ray's head. He treaded high in the air, going against the airflow that rushed out of the cabin. He walked inside like he was taking a leisurely stroll. Chapter 892. Zhang Yingying raised her hand reflexively. Her fingertips rubbed twice, quickly dispersing the cool dampness. However, the feeling of being pressed into a layer of water remained in her memory. It was exceptionally clear. She subconsciously reached out to pinch. Luo Nan shrugged and flicked her hand away. I'm ashamed. I really can't split myself into two at Band City, so I used a smokescreen. Tired my ass. You're practically playing with flowers, okay. Zhang Yingying quickly came back to her senses. She quickly completed a successful association, connecting the conjectures and hypotheses she had for the past 2 days. So it really is Luo Yuan Y. Moya's Imo. Well said, well said. Hey. Zhang Yingying really couldn't hold back. She reached out to pinch Luo Nan's cheeks. She looked at this flawless face under normal lighting. She wanted to know what material it was made of and how it was pieced together. Open your mouth, blink, stick out your tongue, move your ears. Holy crap. What a godly skill. Not at all. The main reason is because Her Majesty Empress Wu taught me the condensation ring's penetrative subtlety. I just did a few configuration designs and combinations. A large portion of it was piled up by automatic calculations. Luo Nan twisted his fake face and spoke words of flattery with a sincere attitude. This made Zhang Yingying, Empress Wu's lackey, quite happy. You really have a sweet mouth. It can be seen that people can't be stopped when they're bad. Fine, I won't worry about you anymore. Don't make Her Majesty wait for too long. Go on, go on. But come out and play again. How about I try using Baihong to cut you? Don't be silly. Luo Nan waved his hand and locked onto the location of Her Majesty Empress Wu's aura. He didn't need Zhang Yingying to lead the way. He went straight over. Her Majesty Empress Wu's private airship had a rather simple design. Its intelligent guidance was outstanding. Luo Nan didn't spend much time on the road. He soon found the study, knocked on the door, and received a reply. Come in. Her Majesty Empress Wu. Luo Nan pushed the door open and entered. He saw today's important target. This study was located at the side of the airship. There was a region sealed with a single piece of tempered glass. Large amounts of skylight carried the colors of the low-altitude mist as it penetrated through. But as the airship rose into the air, its brightness and color quickly slid to a brighter and more gorgeous region. Her Majesty Empress Wu was right in front of this floor-to-ceiling window. She was wrapped in a wide dress made of fine linen. Her long hair was curled up on one side of her shoulders, and her body was curled up on the recliner. She was bathed in the sunlight, and a section of her bare feet was slightly exposed. A scroll of paper was placed on her chest, and it seemed that she had just put it down. This situation and this scene could satisfy Luo Nan's most typical image of a literary woman. If he were to do a sketch, he would be able to delightedly start writing right now. Of course, if it was possible, Luo Nan wanted to depict the exquisite structure of the extraordinary power of this super expert before his eyes. This super expert had a deep and serene aura, a dangerous peak, and a strange rise upon careful examination. Analyzing the lamination interference, creating a perfect body, and a series of research had already solidified his corresponding foundation and honed his unique insight. Under these conditions, a serious analysis of an extraordinary's body and soul framework would yield different results. Unfortunately, he didn't have the chance to observe further for the time being. Her Majesty Empress Wu had already slowly sat up, and her gaze fell on his face. Compared to the sunlight that shone in, there was a transparency and clarity that went straight to the core. Speaking of which, this was the first time he met Her Majesty Empress Wu, and she was also leaning against a glass wall. He didn't know if this was a coincidence, or if she really did have a taste for this sort of environment. Quite a nice design. Her Majesty Empress Wu was the first to comment on Luo Nan. She was clearly referring to this avatar that Luo Nan had created. She tilted her neck slightly, sizing him up from head to toe with great interest. It didn't matter if she had heard the conversation between Luo Nan and Zhang Yingying, or if she possessed an even sharper insight. In short, she was indeed in the know, and Luo Nan had achieved his goal of informing her. But this was just a prelude. There were some things that he needed to explain in greater detail. A large part of the reason he came today lay in this. Luo Nan walked 2 steps into the room and bowed toward Her Majesty Empress Wu. But before he could even speak, Her Majesty Empress Wu was a step ahead of him. You don't need to say much. I took a few glances at the mail you sent to Ouyang and Oldyu yesterday. I have a rough understanding of the situation. That's enough for now. What she said was a description of the situation that Luo Nan had sorted out yesterday afternoon. She had carefully explained a few things, but it was still relatively brief. It was naturally for the best that Her Majesty Empress Wu didn't mind. It saved Luo Nan the trouble of speaking. Right now, all Luo Nan could do was be polite. Ah. Thank you, Your Majesty. Her Majesty Empress Wu gave a silent laugh. She revealed her bright and clean teeth. She casually placed the book to the side and propped herself up with one hand on the recliner. She continued to chat with Luo Nan from a natural and casual angle. You have the habit of hiding your head and showing your tail. I also have a penchant for mysticism. We can barely be considered kindred spirits. Chapter 893. Under Luo Nanmu's stupefied gaze, Her Majesty Empress Wu's skirt sleeves slid down to her elbows, revealing jade white and smooth forearms. Her clear gaze shot straight through the narrow passageway formed by her 2 arms, and their gazes intersected. This action was somewhat similar to what Zhang Yingying had done earlier, but how could it be the same? Luo Nan was truly a bit stupefied, so much so that he missed half a sentence. Luckily, Her Majesty Empress Wu quickly spoke, her voice clear. This is the masterpiece of Luo Yuandao and the others. This was because the so-called formatting theory that they taught was quite outstanding. It was like the logic that this universe should have. Even if the framework was too strict and caused one's growth to be delayed, as long as one kept digging within the framework and relied on the logic of formatting theory, one could deal with many things. And until now, those idiots outside haven't given you a single question that's beyond the syllabus. Are you talking about me? Luo Nan came back to his senses in a half-awake state. He struggled out of the bewilderment of his basic emotions and instinctive reactions. He vaguely felt that he had heard similar words before, but he forgot whether or not they had come from Her Majesty Empress Wu. The point was, he had always been happy with such expressions, so he took the opportunity to catch his breath and bowed his head in thanks. Thank you for your praise, Your Majesty. Do you understand it that way? Her Majesty Empress Wu laughed involuntarily. She withdrew her hand under Luo Nan's confused expression, but she still maintained her current distance. She looked down at Luo Nan's eyes. Do you think I'm praising you? Let's just take it that way. But forgive me for being blunt, there's no future in the mental path. Luo Nan had forgotten how many times he had fallen into an awkward situation where he was unable to continue the conversation. The most direct reaction in his mind was preposterous. It must be known that the Iron Triangle of Xia City, including Her Majesty Empress Wu, were all on the mental side. A feeling of absurdity filled his chest. However, when it came to a technical discussion, even if it was more macroscopic, he still maintained his composure and found the corresponding logic. Your Majesty, do you mean that we shouldn't focus on the spiritual side, and that we need the material and spiritual sides to go hand in hand and interact with each other? What he did not say was, just like Raven. Yet here, Her Majesty Empress Wu carried out her mysticism, smiling without saying a word. Luo Nan's chest felt a bit stuffy. He could only continue his train of thought. If this was what Her Majesty Empress Wu meant, then, it was quite reasonable. Though Luo Nan had always put special effort into the mental side, he had always used his mother's coupling theory to build a body and soul frame where the God gear and body gear interacted. Logically speaking, it could not be considered particularly biased. However, after killing Gong Qi, the winner-takes-all rule of the altar's spiderweb was activated, seizing all of Gong Qi's soul energy. This caused his accumulation in the mental aspect to skyrocket once again, distorting the structure of space and time, and basically forming a sandwich domain. This brought about a new round of imbalance between body and soul. It really did bring quite a bit of trouble to Luo Nan. If that was the case, it would make sense. Luo Nan hesitated for a few seconds. He saw that Her Majesty Empress Wu was still smiling. Her Majesty Empress Wu didn't have any explicit intentions. Luo Nan thought about how she had once refused to listen to his cultivation insights. She had even said, "My medicine is his poison." Right now, this line of thought was probably working. In this way, Luo Nan could only respond, "I will pay attention. I will ask His Majesty for guidance later." Only now did Her Majesty Empress Wu make a move. She reached out a hand and pressed it against the chest of Luo Nan's avatar. She pushed it back slightly, pulling some distance away. "How about it? Now you've encountered a social partner that doesn't revolve around you. Plus, you have a request of others. The feeling is different from calling yourself an ancestor. If you really want to be a so-called social person, then you have to answer a question right now. What are you prepared to use to curry favor with me?" Was this a demonstration? Or was it a hint or an explicit indication? Or was it time to cut to the main topic? Luo Nan was still a bit nervous for a time. But then, Her Majesty Empress Wu cracked a smile once more. "Forget it. In this form of social interaction, you are still a newbie. There's no point in letting you guess. Speaking of which, you are one of my more outstanding investment targets in recent years. But investment is just my chosen profession. My interest in it has already begun to fade. There are only a few hobbies that haven't changed over the years." Luo Nan would be an idiot if he still didn't understand by this time. He hurriedly bowed and asked, "I'd like to hear the details." Her Majesty Empress Wu didn't beat around the bush. She bent 3 fingers in succession. First, travel. Second, archaeology. Third, treasure hunting. That's about it. Luo Nan went, and asked cautiously, "Can Your Majesty speak a bit more in detail?" Her Majesty Empress Wu finally indicated that Luo Nan, the guest who entered the room, could find a place to sit. She then returned to sit on the recliner in front of the French window. "I don't have enough courage." "Forget it. Whatever you say is what you say." Luo Nan forcefully swallowed the ridicule in his throat to maintain the continuity of her words. He looked at her leaning against the increasingly bright light of the sky and spoke unhurriedly. "Traveling is like looking at flowers on horseback." Chapter 894. Her Majesty Empress Wu was quite interested in the misty labyrinth. It was probably because she felt that that place was very compatible with her 3 hobbies. She chatted with Luo Nan about many things she needed to know about traveling in special terrains. She chatted about the clues and suspicions of excavating historical ruins. She also chatted with Luo Nan about whether or not there were any hidden treasures. Frankly speaking, I've learned a lot. However, under the mysterious style of the other party, this round of dialogue and teaching had thrown out too many threads, yet they didn't consider the problem of collecting them. Luo Nan's mind was inevitably a bit muddled by the time he came out from the study. His thoughts were twisted into a rather complicated mess. He subconsciously let out a long sigh. After walking a few more steps, he came back to his senses after hearing some of Her Majesty Empress Wu's descriptions. At this moment, the discussion about the misty maze became secondary. However, some terms, such as stunted growth and beyond the scope, became extremely clear. Luo Nan acknowledged that Luo Nan was slow in growth and whatnot. After all, a 16-year-old fellow had just entered the voice-changing stage. He had no qualifications to object. As for the possibility that Luo Nan was hinting at mental development, he sat upright within the theoretical framework of formatting theory. He had his own pride. Why can't I do what my parents taught me? Her Majesty Empress Wu was the only one who didn't exceed the syllabus. Luo Nan felt a bit wronged. Was it really not beyond the scope? Ever since he came into contact with the inner world, more and more matters and challenges had surpassed his ability and understanding. Were it not for the external neuron and the system carried by the wraith sign, as well as the timely flow of data from the Sunwell Hell that propelled the several elements to form an inconceivable chemical reaction, he would have long since reached a dead end. He could only rely on the protection of the Xia City branch. Just like the Red Fox. Speaking of which, everything that Luo Nan possessed right now, whether it was the dual systems of the virtual brain and the wraith sign, or the absorption and precipitation of the flood of data from the Sunwell Hell, formatting theory had indeed played the role of a main axis. This was the basis for Her Majesty Empress Wu's evaluation. However, the more one studied all of this, the more profound and boundless it would become. In the process, the more trouble it would cause. The two were directly related. Luo Nan was faced with a situation that was becoming more and more complicated. It was unavoidable for him to accumulate a sense of exhaustion. "Oh, Luo Yuan, why?" Zhang Yingying greeted Zhang Tai in the same look as before with a towel over her neck. "How long do you want to stay in the airship in this state?" Luo Nan had a new nickname on top of his head. He finally came back to his senses and grinned. "Since I'm on the ship, I must follow her to T-City." Zhang Yingying was very surprised. T-City. If this thing followed him, where would the real body come from? This thing followed. How is the real body coming? Or should I use this thing to go? Yeah, what's that? Zhang Yingying's eyes curved into crescents. Luo Nan slapped his forehead. His vexed mood was like that of a normal person, but he used this opportunity to adjust his state of mind. He strove to put on airs. Zhang Yingying frowned. "In other words, I'll have to spend 10 hours with this thing." Luo Nan was already numb to the terms "this toy" and "that toy." But soon he raised his eyebrows. He was no different from a real person. "We can spar a bit. We'll use this toy." Go to hell. Zhang Yingying understood this quite clearly. Her eyeballs swiveled, and she didn't mind the tide. She extended her arm and wrapped it around Luo Nan's shoulder. "Since it brought your thoughts and feelings over, it can play games. Why don't we start with 10 days? Luo Nan's heart stirred when he heard the word game. He was a bit hesitant. "I've never tried this before. Virtual reality tests the bionic nerve conduction quite a bit. I'm afraid I'll have to do some more testing." "Who asked you to play such a high-end game? Just a projection is enough." "Aw. You mean AR mode?" Luo Nan was a bit disappointed, but he soon thought back to the past. He couldn't help but laugh. "Those on the Lanshan warship are fine too." Rui Wen stared at him for a moment before laughing. Then, she quickly waved her hand. "Forget it. Some people's levels have risen, and they can't afford to eat plain tea and plain food. I have a helmet here, so I'll provide the equipment. But I'll say the ugly words up front. This is a limited edition. If it gets penetrated by moisture, or if there's an electrical leak, you'll be fined 10 times for destroying it." 5 minutes later, Luo Nan sat cross-legged on the floor in the training room of the airship. He put the legendary limited edition tactical helmet on the head of the avatar and entered binding mode. He connected it to the internal sensors, debugging it with relish. In a sense, this was a high-level test of the perfect body. It was to see if the avatar's structure could conform to the deep physical and structural logic of the human body. If the avatar could deceive the relatively advanced Frost River reality system, then it would be the same as taking another step towards the ultimate reality. When that time came, the only thing lacking would be materials and nothing more. Zhang Yingying sat cross-legged on the floor. She was only 2 to 3 meters away from Luonan. Her hands were pressed against the floor as she leaned back. She sized up the waterman avatar, which was more and more indistinguishable from the real one. A long time passed before she sighed. Then she turned on the AR mode of 10 days in the wilderness and started playing online combat. She won 2 rounds without any energy. She was matched with an opponent in the 3rd round when she suddenly heard Luonan speak. "It's done. It's done. It's done." Today, the two of them were addicted to imitating each other. Zhang Yingying rolled her eyes. "Can you use this helmet now?" The avatar's head was still buried in the helmet, but it did not really rely on its throat to speak. Its voice was still clear. "I've already passed the ability user test. It's a pity that I lack other simulation equipment. It would be perfect if I had the 6 degrees of freedom hero seat." "Hey, you're pushing your luck. I'm saying that this is enough. You can try a mental battle right now. The AR mode will be able to test." "Sister Yingying, can you help me out?" "Then what are you waiting for?" Zhang Yingying directly exited from the successfully matched game and re-entered. She sent Luonan an online invite. Come. It's not a problem to abuse you 100 times on this. Are you sure?" Zhang Yingying cracked her knuckles. "Don't talk nonsense. Choose your opponent." Holy crap. Kids are very vengeful. Luonan's face was sealed under the tactical helmet. His expression could not be seen. However, from the character interface in the AR projection area, one could see that he chose the first of the 4 major character categories: regular, deep blue, fantasy, and mutant. He chose the first category without the slightest hesitation. A military conventional weapon platform and a combat hero. There was also a character. He chose it instantly. The Earth Army's ace firepower user who carried a robotic dog. Heir. Zhang Yingying remembered it very clearly. 9 months ago, Luonan and she first met on ship Lanshan. They played the game 10 days in the wilderness. He used this character to fight from start to finish. As for his battle record, hee. Needless to say, Zhang Yingying gave tit for tat. She also chose the mutant character, Feng Huang. She perfectly recreated the situation from back then. Come on. Let big sister tell you. A little brother is a little brother. He's still a little brother even when he's inflated. Chapter 895. Zhang Yingying's bold and visionary words lasted for a total of 3 rounds, a total of around 8 minutes. A muddle-headed round. An emotional round. A calm observation round. Then she decisively logged off and solemnly announced Zhang Yingying and Luonan's career battle record as of May 14, 2018 at 10:35 a.m. The former holds an overwhelming advantage. That's too much. You, an extraordinary, bullying a weak girl like me is really too much. Zhang Yingying's expression was serious. She immediately sent a screenshot of the career battle record to the group. She also sent it to social media. As expected, her wristband began to vibrate continuously in just half a minute. The notifications didn't stop. Her circle of friends and ability users were like a tsunami, worshipping her. Zhang Yingying was immensely proud of herself. She beamed with joy. Do whatever you want. Luonan also smiled. At the same time, his body fell backward. He wore his helmet and laid directly on the floor, making a muffled sound. His actions made the other party unhappy. Hey, what do we do if water seeps through? F***CKU. Speaking of which, thank you. Thank me for what? Perjury. Once this screenshot is sent, everyone will know that I went to T-City with you. It will be much easier for Mr. Mo to do things in Ban City. Zhang Yingying was very surprised. This effect. What's going on in your head? Pfft. In the end, Zhang Yingying couldn't hold it in. She burst out laughing and then extended her leg to kick him. Really? How many times does your brain spin every day? You're playing a game and you're thinking about these things. Do you have any sincerity? Perhaps it was because his avatar was lying on the floor, but Luo Nan, who shared this posture, actually had a bit of a lazy mood. No matter how Zhang Yingying rubbed her toes against him, he was too lazy to move. His response was also slow and unhurried. It should spin a lot of times. There should be a lot of people, a lot of different aspects. It's like an enormous computer room. Buzz buzz buzz, buzz buzz buzz. As Luo Nan spoke, Zhang Yingying suddenly stopped talking. She didn't make any small movements. She just silently gazed at him. It was true that Luo Nan was wearing a tactical helmet, but he didn't need to use his eyes to see Zhang Yingying's emotional changes. Was this pity? What kind of image did he have in the eyes of his friends? Luo Nan felt a bit uncomfortable under such a gaze. He subconsciously changed the topic, speaking of which, 10 Days in the Wilderness has a story mode, right? Levels that introduce the background, environment, and characters of the game. You don't have to be so petty. Even though Zhang Yingying didn't understand why Luo Nan was asking about this, she quickly adjusted her mentality. She answered seriously, even though the demand for a standalone game to be released in 10 days has always been high, there are far too many characters inside. There are still more every year. It's very hard to take care of all of them. There still isn't a story mode right now. There should at least be a basic introduction. Then we'll have to go to the official website. Luo Nan clicked his tongue. It's not too friendly for newbies, right? Speaking of which, I let Mo Peng guide me in. I'm going to crush them right from the start. Everyone here is a type of combat training, but there is still a simple tutorial mode for newbies. Where was it? To the left of the main interface's notice board, super unassuming. Zhang Yingying guided Luo Nan step by step until they found the entrance to the novice guide. Then she saw Luo Nan dive in head first. At the same time, he opened the official website and pondered over the utterly boring novice mode over and over again. What the hell are you doing? Reference. You're crazy. Though she said this, Zhang Yingying knew that Luo Nan certainly had some serious business to do. She didn't open her mouth to disturb him any longer. Instead, she flipped through the recordings of the first 3 rounds and reviewed them. She watched Haiya's amazing movement speed. Under Luo Nan's control, Haiya practically didn't move an inch. He played with heavy firepower to the effect of an inescapable net. From start to finish, there were no mistakes. There were no redundancies. There were no mistakes. He arranged his brilliance very clearly. Then she picked up the memories from 9 months ago and compared them. It was as if a lifetime had passed. If she took today's recording and went to find Sophie, what would the conclusion be? Zhang Yingying pursed her lips and laughed at this meaningless guess. She raised her head again and looked at the game interface that was still presented in AR form. Luo Nan had stopped here for a long time. He tried the novice guide mission over and over again, starting a conversation with the virtual solemn drill instructor. It was as if he didn't feel bored at all. But as long as he was a normal person, how could he not be bored? The only things that could make a person endure boredom were other problems that were even more unbearable than boredom. For example, the deep pressure that Luo Nan unconsciously exposed. Zhang Yingying sighed. She stood up noiselessly and walked out of the training room. She left behind the most peaceful environment in the space. She hoped that the incorporeal pressure would slowly dissolve inside, and not continue to accumulate. Luo Nan knew that Zhang Yingying had left. He was able to understand this consideration. This undoubtedly gave him a bit of support and motivation. However, a person's mental state was always fluctuating. It was hard to fathom. Not long after he began to be alone, he was attacked by an intense sleepiness. Perhaps it was just like what he had said to Zhang Yingying before. The continuous stimulation of staying in a low-noise environment with a humming sound for a long time would bring about a stronger nervous inhibition. Especially after a clear fluctuation of emotions. In a certain sense, Luo Nan was still quite clear-headed. He clearly realized that he was in a state where his body and mind were at the bottom of a valley. The most appropriate thing to do in this situation was to sleep. He thought about it. It seemed that he hadn't slept for a few days. The problem was that he was pressed for time. He would reveal his cards on the night of the 16th at the earliest. There was only 60 hours until now. The new plane was just an overly exaggerated blueprint. But if he were to forcefully get excited now, the next double low tide would come. It was very likely that he would be caught up in a fatal period. He wouldn't even have the chance to adjust when that time came. Two kinds of thoughts were fighting. The eyelids of his main body, which was still above North Mountain Lake, were also fighting. In the end, it was unknown who won. A gap was torn in the middle of Luo Nan's continuous stream of consciousness. It was boundless and unknown. From Luo Nan's perspective, he just needed to close his eyes and open them again. His consciousness connected once more. He continued to input the surrounding environment's information and made an interpretation. In theory, he could roughly know how much time had passed unconsciously from the changes in the environment. At the very least, he could just look at his watch. But at this moment, some sort of marvelous dislocation appeared in the stream of information that was constantly being input and analyzed. In short, when Luo Nan opened his eyes, he didn't see the cabin of a luxurious yacht. He didn't see the game interface where his doppelgangers were docked. He didn't even see the completely enclosed space of the tactical helmet. What he saw was a serious and unfamiliar face. Chapter 896. Wartime Synchronization Rate. A doubtful thought flashed through Luo Nan's mind. The information interface of the retinal imaging opened up in his left eye's field of vision. There was a clear list of data, but the words were not words he was familiar with. After a moment of shock, Luo Nan suddenly realized that the sentences spoken by this unfamiliar, serious-faced drill instructor were not the language he normally used. He could understand these languages, words, and symbols without any hindrance. Even when he understood this state of understanding, his body and consciousness were seamlessly connected to this dynamic scene. It was as if Luo Nan was participating in a first-person perspective virtual reality game. He looked at himself in the game and replied loudly. Synchronization rate is 0, Sergeant Major. Did you overtrain? The serious-faced drill instructor's expression was a bit sluggish. Then there was a moment of blurriness. Then there was a very clear frown expression. Your name is Luo Nan, right? If the synchronization rate was 0, you would be lying in the morgue right now. At this time, a new message popped up in his left eye's field of vision. It was the kind of mode that was like an explanation, but also like a maxim. The Tianyuan Spirit Internet is the framework that supports supernatural powers. It is the cornerstone of the self-evolving ladder to heaven. Without the support of the Tianyuan Spirit Internet, the material universe is more ruthless than you can imagine. It was like déjà vu in a third-rate game. While Luo Nan was complaining, he displayed the qualities of a professional soldier in the game. He continued to respond loudly, "Yes, Sergeant Major." That was what he said, but the current situation was as such. The drill instructor also discovered this. His frown deepened. Maybe you are a person with a complex environment. The recruitment office is probably so busy that their brains are fried. Then, you don't need to participate in the follow-up test. The relay station is under siege. We can't send you to the rear. Go to the confinement room for a while. That might be the safest place right now. As soon as his voice trailed off, there was a dramatic echo. Violent tremors and muffled explosions came from afar, so much so that the floor beneath their feet was visibly shaking. But at this time, Luo Nan could clearly feel the stimulation of the surrounding gazes. He glanced out of the corner of his eye. He saw a row of soldiers dressed like him lined up neatly on both sides of him. It was just that their outfits were similar. The soldiers in this row were of different sizes. The tallest exceeded 4 meters, more than twice the size of Luo Nan. Though they all possessed a relatively clear humanoid structure, their skin, bones, and even their eyes, ears, nose, mouth, and other organs were not so certain. One of them even had a thick layer of stratum corneum outside his body, like a suit of armor. He was born with a bone exoskeleton. What exactly was this? Luo Nan, step out. Turn right. Seeing that he was about to be kicked out of the party, both in the game and the relatively transcendent consciousness of his main body were anxious. At this moment, a vague feeling of chaos attacked him. The data image in his left eye's field of vision was disturbed. It shook slightly and became blurry. When it became clear again, the numbers and symbols on it had changed. At the same time, a message box popped up. The Tianyuan spirit network has not been detected. Using the local database as a substitute for the simulator function's completeness data. Current completeness is 73%. This sounded like the tone of the virtual brain system. Luo Nan's consciousness was also momentarily dazed. In the next moment, he merged with his character in the game, but he still followed the established procedure. He loudly reported, 73. Current status is 73%. Sergeant Major. The words were spoken, but the feeling of chaos in this scene grew more and more serious. Luo Nan was not muddle-headed in this environment. He was clear-headed. He became more and more convinced that this scene was probably the result of the plot simulated by the Innerverse simulator. He was already able to feel the simulator operating, extracting all the available data and integrating the relevant logic. But due to the shortcomings of its design, it was unable to meet the requirements of the plot design. It operated continuously and combined with the surrounding resources. The so-called resources were naturally the Wraith sign system, including Luo Nan himself. Perhaps Luo Nan's subconscious was the crux of the combination of the three. The three worked with each other. When Luo Nan entered a sleeping state, they realized an interactive push, pushing the stagnant plot simulation forward. In other words, Luo Nan was really dreaming. He was dreaming in a typical lucid dream. This was an interesting yet absurd solution. The virtual brain system and the Wraith sign system gave way to Luo Nan's self-awareness when it came to this kind of creative matter. Luo Nan subconsciously used the tools at hand to deal with this difficult problem. This solution couldn't be considered clear, but it converged into a meaningful solution amidst the chaos. Luo Nan reckoned that the current constructed plot scene was a synthesis of many factors. Aside from his own subconscious, the tens of thousands of living beings within the altar's spiderweb had contributed their memories as well. Of course, there was also the Sunwell prison. The characters he had seen so far were not of the style of Earth. Luo Nan's random changes probably had an effect on the established plot. Everyone around him and their respective characters seemed to be undergoing more or less adjustments and changes. Frankly speaking, this was a bit out of character. Plus, the virtual brain system was still working very diligently. It presented some background data in the form of information frames before Luo Nan's eyes. Luo Nan was really worried that this chaotic scene would fall apart because he was too clear-headed. Maybe I should use the dreaming technique on myself next time before I go to sleep. After some consideration, Luo Nan temporarily closed the pop-up window belonging to the virtual brain system. This helped him experience the plot and the deeper layers of the plot in a more immersive manner. As for the deeper layers of explanation, he could wait until the end of this plot before comparing them. While Luo Nan was evaluating the situation before his eyes, the drill instructor with a serious face had already found a reason to explain the current situation within the chaos. The amplitude of your synchronization rate's fluctuations in battle is far too large. It's extremely unstable. If it isn't a problem with your built-in artificial intelligence, then it means that you're an emotional person. Luo Nan, step forward. Luo Nan and the character Luo Nan projected no longer had any reason to refuse. They could only answer and step forward. Yes, Sergeant Major. I've seen your data. You've built a decent foundation in internal cultivation and truth opening, but you haven't formed a furnace yet. Your fleshly body isn't strong enough. You aren't suited for frontal combat. Go find Officer Liang Lu. He will arrange a follow-up mission for you. Luo Nan and his game character were a bit stupefied. Luo Nan was stupefied because he heard a familiar name. Luo Nan was stupefied because of the impact of this command. In any case, a brand new mission instruction began to pop out in his left eye's field of vision. The location of Officer Liang Lu was marked on a simple map of the base. Luo Nan stared at the special identification symbol of Liang Lu. He could not help but think, did the Innerverse simulator simply borrow this name, or did it utilize a deeper layer of information? You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.